Good evening, ladies, gentlemen. It's nice to see you. Hello, hello. Okay, so what we are going to do today is to check what the learning guide says about our next topic. And the next topic is, according to the schedule, our next activity is related to forum, personaje histórico writing. To talk about this forum, we will need we will need to understand how simple past tense works. So we have, according to the schedule, the proposal for you to complete all the evidences is to do it until the 20th of November. However, we suggest you to complete this forum before the 5th of November so you don't have to present all activities at the same time and you will have time any evidence if required. So, according to the learning guide, once again, we're going to present a forum. And the forum says, according to the learning guide, al hablar en el tiempo pasado, no solo podemos hablar de nuestra propia historia, sino de la historia del mundo. Y ahí se abre un abanico de posibilidades, donde podemos transmitir infinidad de historias e información. Sabiendo esto, para llevar a cabo la presente evidencia, revise el componente formativo Down Memory Lane, y teniendo en el foro, escoja un personaje ilustre o famoso de la historia y realice las siguientes acciones. So, we're going to choose a person who I hope you choose a person who has done something good for humanity, like, I don't know, the cure for cancer, stopped slavery, liberated Papua New Guinea from the British colonies, I don't know, something like that. And you're going to mention 15 events that are important to this person. I mean, and it's similar to the, what's the name? To the first activity where you presented a timeline of your life. It's similar, but you're going to focus not in yourself, but instead you're going to focus in somebody else's life. For this, you're going to mention not 10 events like you did before. Instead, you're going to mention 15 events of his or her life. Let's suppose Simon Bolivar's life. So these are the count that all the events are mentioned in past. So you need to know how to use the past. And because I have seen that sometimes you type this activity in present, so be careful with that. By the way, because Sayuna is not working yet, I suggest you to send me the activities via email so I can correct them through email. And if it's your decision, of course, if you prefer, I suggest you to do the activities, take them prepared, and as soon as Sayuna is available again, I'll upload them to the platform so I can correct the activity. Okay, so the corresponding activity. So this is what we need to do. We are going to present a forum mentioning something about Simón Bolívar's life, Policarpo Salivarrieta's life, Mahatma Gandhi's life, something like that. A person, and you're going to mention 15 events of his or her life, everything related in past, because we are studying simple past tense in this level. ¿Vale? Okay, so this is what the learning guide says. But now let's do a quick recap of what we were studying before. So to do this, to understand this topic, we need to know how simple past tense works. So simple past tense, we said, is divided in two parts. We were focusing in the second hand, on the second part, on the second arm, second leg, second event of the simple past tense, because we have the verb to be and the management of other verbs. So when we were talking about simple past tense, side B, we said we have affirmative, negative, and questions. And when we compare the present with the past, we're going to see that it's very similar. I mean, the management is pretty. A person who performs an action in present, I work, you study, for example, and in past, we have a person who did performed an action in past. I worked, you studied, right? We also mentioned that we need to focus in the verb because verbs are important here. And we said that we have regular verbs and also irregular verbs. For regular verbs, we add ed at the end of the verb, and the pronunciation different depending on the context. It has to be the ed ending is going to sound like to, do, or id. So we have already studied that. And for irregular verbs, we have to memorize. Sorry, there's no other way. For negative sentences and for questions in simple present tense, we said that we are going to use an auxiliary verb. And when we use an auxiliary verb, that in present is going to be do or does, the main verb is not going to change. It's never simple present tense. In simple past tense, we did something similar because we are going to use an auxiliary verb and the main verb is not going to change. However, the auxiliary verb is going to be conjugated in past. Therefore, we use did for everyone. You, he, I, they, we, and so on. Okay? So this is something we studied last time. So we're going to focus on the first part of the simple past tense now. The first part, because we have already the second. The first part is the management of verb to be. So to talk about verb to be, we need to know that verb to be is conjugated in two different forms. In Spanish, we would say era, estaba, era, éramos, estábamos, eran, estaban, erais, estabais, perhaps. What else? What else? What else? Eran, estaban. Yeah, there's nothing else. And in English, it's going to be just was or were. Present tense, in fact. Because if we compare simple present tense, and we are going to do it in a moment, we are going to see that the only difference between present and past in terms of verb to be, in terms of grammar, I mean, is that the conjugation of the verb to be. That's the difference. That's the only difference. The conjugation of verb to be. It's not going to be conjugated as is are. Instead, it's going to be conjugated as was or were. Sorry. So to remember that there are people, so subject pronouns, and these people could be mentioned in singular or plural form in first, second, or third person. First person because I am included there. Second person, I am the focus is on the person or group of people I am talking to, and third person is somebody else that is not integrated in the conversation right now, right? And we said that these people are going to make activity. Most important verbs in English are be, do, and have. We also mentioned that the conjugation of verb to have it could be have or has. Do for do can also be does, and the verb to be is going to be is are in present. So am for I, are for all plurals, and is for a woman, a man, and an animal. When we are using the same verbs in past, the conjugation of verb to have, tener, tengo, it's going to be mentioned as had. The verb to do is going to be did. And the verb to be is going to be was or were. So we're going to use was for the same guys, for a woman, a man, an animal. But now, because I don't want to be alone anymore, I'm going to make a team with them, with Fernando, Patricia, and the mosquito. Okay, we are going to get together. I mean, in the same team, alone, of verb to be for us is going to be was. And for everybody else, I mean for all plurals, the conjugation is going to be were. To create negative sentences in simple present tense, well, not only in simple present tense, because it could be also a present perfect. The conjugation for negative sentences for have could be have not or haven't, and has not or hasn't. This is a perfect tense for a perfect tense. For verb to do in simple present tense now, we use do not or don't for I, we, you, they, for all plurals and I. And we use does not or doesn't, the contraction, for a woman, a man, and an animal. And we already know that the verb to be can be conjugated as I am not, I'm not, for I, are not, aren't, or are not for all plurals, and is not, isn't, a woman, man, and animal, right? This is something we already know from simple present tense. What about the past form of this? We are going to do something similar because if you remember, we just add the word not, or the contraction, of course, to the auxiliary verb to create a negative sentence. ¿Vale? But what about the past form of all these verbs, for the most important verbs in English? Or we're going to do what we are going to do is to add the word not, like in Spanish. Yo no estoy en casa. I am not at home, for example. The same thing we do in present is the same thing we are going to do in past. So for verb to have, that's once again is going to be used as an auxiliary verb in perfect tenses. The conjugation is going to be had not or hadn't, if you prefer. Before in session number 2, not today, but session number 2, the conjugation for a simple past tense in negative sentences is going to be didn't or did not, because we use the auxiliary verb do but in past. And for verb to be, the negative form of verb to be for I, he, she, it, I mean, once again, I create a team with Marcelo, Alejandra, and let me think in an animal, and the bird, right? When we create a team, we are alone, but in the same team, the conjugation for us is going to be was not or wasn't. For everybody else, it's going to be were not or weren't. So, same. But we are going to focus on verb to be. We already know how we conjugate this verb. What about the applicability? Why do we use verb to be? Why is this important? In simple present tense, we said that the applicability for verb to be we have in Spanish, because it talks about ser estar in present, right? Okay, so the same reasons why we study verb to be in present are the same reasons why we are why we are going to study verb to be in past. And these reasons are pretty coherent. Location, for example, in the present, I am at home. I 30 minutes ago. Now I'm in the downtown, suppose that, right? And for marital status, relationship, emotions, appearance, physical appearance, I mean personality, occupations, time, nationalities, all of these are related to simple present tense, and also in verb to be in simple present tense, I mean, and also it's are used, the same reasons are used in Spanish. Ella está casada, she is married. Divorciada, she was widowed, right, for example. So the same reasons why we study verb to be in present are the same reasons why we study verb to be in past, both in Spanish and in English. The only difference, again, is with the age, because in Spanish we say yo era joven, ellos tenían 17 años. I'm sorry, ellos tenían 17 años, nosotros teníamos 21 años cuando esto pasó. We are not going to use the verb to have. Instead, we are going to use the verb to be, and once again, in past. When I was younger, when Felipe was 19 years old, and so on, right? Was and were. So, how this works? How does this work? I'm going to make a parallel between present and past now. In present, we have the conjugation of verb to be. So she is tall, a description of. In past, we could say she was tall. She was short, I suppose, because she's tall now, but 5 years ago she was short because she was a toddler, right? So she grew up. The only difference between present and past, obviously, apart besides the context, obviously, is the conjugation of verb to be. That's not going to be am, is, or are, but instead was or were. That's it. What about negative sentences? Negative sentences, we said in present tense, verb to be, simple present tense. We use the word not after the verb to be. She is not engaged. Ella no está comprometida. In past, we could say she was not engaged. Ella no estaba comprometida, for example. We were not engaged, if you prefer to use the verb to be conjugated as for plural were. So we just to be. It's pretty similar if you see it, because the organization is the same. The only difference is the conjugation is in the conjugation of verb to be. That's it. What about questions? For questions, if you remember verb to be, oops. Wait a minute, just a sec. Yeah. For questions, if you remember simple present tense with verb to be, the verb to be comes at the beginning of the question. Are you guys brothers and sisters? ¿Son ustedes hermanos y hermanas? Are you guys siblings? ¿Son hermanos? Right? In this case, was he your brother? ¿Era él tu hermano? For example, let's suppose that. Were they your siblings? ¿Eran ellos tus hermanos? Right? For example. So, once again, obviously we modify the verb according to the subject. We use was for I, he, she, it, and we use were for everybody else. So if we understand how verb to be works in simple present tense, simple past tense is going to be pretty easy for us because it's going to be pretty much the same. So the only difference is in the conjugation of verb to be. It's not going to be is, are, but instead was or were. That's it. It's pretty easy, pretty easy. And the other topic to talk about the forum is the management of there was and there were. There was and there were, like in simple present tense, we said I, right? There is and there are. In simple past tense, the conjugation in past mean is going to be there was and there were. There was for singular, there were for plural, similar to there is and there are. There is for singulars, there are for plurals. But in the context and also not in the context and that we are mentioning something that was true in the past. That's it. That's the only difference between there is, there are, and there was, there were, because the structure, the order is the same. Obviously, we need to modify the verb to be. So it's not going to be is, are. Instead, it's going to be was, were. Was for singulars, were for plurals. And it's better to make some examples because this is pretty easier when we use examples. For example, let's remember something we learned in level 1 because this is part of level 1 too. In level 1 we said when we were studying nouns and when we were studying the article a and the articles, we said that everything must be coherent. I mean, all singular make couples, make a team group with all other singulars. The same happens with plurals. Plurals go with plurals. Singulars with singulars, plurals with plurals. In this case, the noun person is a singular noun. The article is also in singular, and there was is also singular. In the other example, instead, there were, this is a form of plural, hubo, ¿cierto? 5 and jackets is plural. But what about some? Let's remember, we use some, any, to mention amounts that cannot be counted, I mean uncountable nouns, and or amounts that are plural, but the specific number is not important for us. So we use some for affirmatives, we use any for negative sentences, and we use some and any in questions depending on the context. Offering something or requesting something, we use some, and we use any for general questions. Vale? Some and any. Okay, let's go with continue with the example. Everything singular with affirmative. There was a person looking for you. Person is singular, singular, there was singular. The example in plural, there were 5 jackets. The jackets are in plural, the number is in plural, and were is in plural at the same time. Sentences. The same thing we do with verb to be. We just add the word not after the verb to be. That's it. So, when I arrived home, this is the context, there was not or there wasn't any food in the fridge. In this case, food is not countable. So we cannot say 3, 7, 9, and so on. That's why there was is used here, because remember that an work as singular nouns. So food is non-countable, therefore is treated like a singular noun. There was is for singulars, and any is used for a negative sentences. So we have everything related. Everything is coherent. But what about plurals with negative sentences? Everything changes for plural. I mean, we use nouns in plural, articles in plural. Now there was is not going to be used. Instead, it's going to be used. We're going to use there were, or there were not, more precisely, because we're using negatives. Therefore, there weren't any malls open. Malls, or the strongest form of supermarkets, right? Malls are in plural. Any, instead of saying 3, 7, 9, 21, or whatever, we could use any, because any, let's remember, the amount is plural, but it's not important. We could say 7, that's okay. But if we don't want to mention number because we are not sure, we could use any. Ninguno, ninguna, right? Singular with singular, plural with plural. Let's go with questions. Like with verb to be, we mentioned before, in verb to be, simple past tense, to create questions, we use the verb to be question. Were you at home? Was he your brother, for example? The same happens when there was and there were. To make a question, to create a question about availability of something in the past, we are going to substitute words and we're going to use the verb to be at the beginning of the question. And once again, singulars with singulars, plurals with plurals. For example, before pandemics, was there a McDonald's? In fact, I'm going to make a little change. Before pandemic, I mean before 2021, right? Yeah. Before pandemic, was there a McDonald's in your neighborhood? Let's take off here. A McDonald's is just one restaurant. A is the article in singular, and was there, it's all for singular. Let's go with the plural form. Were there, in this case plural, any? Why any? Because we are making questions. But what kind of questions? Am I offering you apprentices? Like slaves in the 17th century? No. Am I asking you to give me apprentices, students? Well, no. So this is any, and because we use any because the amount is plural, but it's not important. We know it's the amount is bigger than two, bigger than one, more precisely. It could be 2, 9, 7, 51, doesn't matter. But if the number is very important, we are going to use 27 or 17 or 3 or 81, doesn't matter. Everything's in plural. 7 apprentices in your class yesterday? Maybe yes, maybe no. Once again, plurals with plurals, and the conjugation goes for singulars, were for plurals, and the organization in terms of grammar is pretty similar to what we see in verb to be, right? So the verb to the for negative sentences is going to be modified with was not or were not, and with questions, the verb to be comes at the beginning of the question. And that's it. That's everything we need to know about simple past tense with verb to be. Everything we need to know to present the activity related to the forum, at least for this session, because next time, the day after tomorrow, 8 p.m. again, we're going to talk about a quick recap about how to create a biography, a step-by-step guide to create a biography. Because talking about taking into account what the learning guide says about the forum, talking about a person in life, in history, sorry, because we are talking about this person, we are in fact mentioning a biography. Therefore, I'm going to mention to create a biography. So this is the activity we're going to do next time. Great. So as always, if you have any questions, guys, don't forget to type me via email, or meanwhile Sayuna is working, just via email, and um, I'll be in touch with you if needed. I'll try to answer as quickly as possible. I wish you a lot of success, guys. Thank you very much for coming, and see you next time.